Now, say my name. Heisenberg. You're goddamn right.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Say My Name podcast. This is a little thing I was thinking about doing for a while, and just a place to talk about movies. The name might change. I came up with it on a whim, but I was thinking of doing this for a couple of months now, and just as like an outlet, I guess. I don't know if I want to take it too seriously yet. It's just a creative thing. I do have another channel just to screw around on, but it's nothing special. This one is more where I could put my thoughts out there and feelings on movies or shows, really whatever I want to talk about. People that have liked similar interests or, you know, whatever it may be, or who could have a discussion about different things that would be fun. I plan on doing this with a friend eventually, but I'm just getting started now just to get the ball rolling, just to see how it goes and kind of get the kinks out of the way before I want to take it in a more serious direction. So right now, I don't know how much editing I'm going to do. This is in the very, very early stages. So I do have notes down over here. And today I want to talk about the Many Saints of Newark. So this was a movie that if you haven't seen The Sopranos, you probably don't know what this is going to be about. I mean, most people have heard of the show, so they know that it's about, you know, the Italian mafia. There are certain things that happen, certain characters that are iconic. Tony Soprano, and his son, the actor James Gandolfini, his son Michael Gandolfini plays him. And there's some stuff I want to get into. I don't know how long this is going to be. This is probably only going to be around 35, 40 minutes because there's not too much I have to say. All of my thoughts are, honestly, and this never happens because my opinions are so controversial. For this movie specifically, I don't know why, but really what everybody else is saying is kind of what I agree with. I mean, there's certain things here and there that I might like, you know, more than this person or less than this guy or whoever. And, you know, I would say about 90%, maybe even 95%. It's really, I mean, I agree with everybody else. So if you guys know who Cody Leach is or Dave McRae or something, sort of like, they both do a lot of commentaries, live streams, stuff like that. That's kind of the idea I'm going for. Like I said, it's not too serious yet. It's just to get the ball rolling, just get some of these kinks out and figure out how it goes. I mean, I've done YouTube for a while. Like I said, I do have a second channel, but it's nothing like this. It's no commentary type stuff. It's just fun edits with music and like compilations and stuff. So The Sopranos is one of my favorite shows. It's probably in my top 5, and I know that sounds basic because everybody says that, but it's, truth be told, because I don't watch much TV, I watch a lot of movies, but TV is something that, I don't know why, it's just not something that I can invest into because I have a hard time sitting through a 2-hour movie, you know, let alone hundreds of hours of television, unless I'm very interested in the show. Like Game of Thrones, for example, I don't want to watch that. I'm not interested in it. I don't care. I don't have time. And, you know, never say never. Things could change, but for right now, that's just sort of where I'm at. I have to be interested in the show. And, you know, growing up, my dad loved The Sopranos. I think now that I'm older, because I'm 20 now, it's easy for me to understand some of the things because when you're a kid, you don't exactly know what's going on and this and that. Like, I just knew about the show, but now I know, like, okay, you know, this is good, this is bad, this is what I like, and I can actually analyze things. Since I know a little bit about the industry and I know people that work in the industry, it's easier for me. So, like, I understand. Even behind the scenes stuff or just shows in general, I get it now, so it makes it easier. The first point that I want to bring up with this movie, and I apologize if this is all over the place, but this is kind of just, there's no real structure to this. It's just kind of my thoughts all at once. The first thing that I want to bring up, because I think this is the first issue that, you know, the first thing that really started to bother me when I was watching the movie, and throughout, even till now, I saw it on the 1st of October, so I don't know if this is going to come out the 4th or the 5th, but I saw it opening night, and the character of Harold, he was a waste. And I don't mean that in, because I mean, everybody's talking about, woke people and movies and cancel culture and all that. And, doing things just for the sake of doing them. And that's not what I'm talking about here. I'm not saying it because he's a black character. I'm not saying that at all, or, because of what he does in the movie, which is try to, break out from the Italian mafia, run his own gang. And that stuff is interesting and it's captivating for what it is, but being The Sopranos, I don't think it has any business being in here. Like, I understand the riots and that time period. That was all a real thing. So if they didn't showcase it, it would have been odd. But I think with just the character himself, it's just strange the way they did this, because they made it seem like he was this big character and they were this and that, and he was never in the show, first of all. So anybody who hasn't seen the show, I don't really consider that a spoiler, but some people might. He's not in the show, so it's not like he's a character or it's somebody's father or something, like a character from the show is, Harold's son, so then he grows up or something. That would even be better than what we got. I don't know. It just, because there's no resolution, and I know some people are going to say, like, oh, it's setting up for a sequel and stuff, and that'll depend on the box office. I think a lot of it has to do with just the character, like the writing of the character. And I think if they wrote him a little bit better and they stuck to what the show is about, because for me personally, it felt like the show, because the set was the same, it was the same writer. David Chase was in on it. They had, I mean, I don't want to say the same actors, but they had that same kind of family, if you will, no pun intended, with the actors like Michael Gandolfini, and Christopher is back, obviously. So there's that familiarity to it, which is nice. And that's what I liked. And, of course they're going to introduce new characters. It felt like oddly placed or not placed, paced. So the way they wanted to do the story, it felt like they wanted to do, I mean, it's called The Many Saints of Newark, and Moltisanti means many saints in Italian. So it makes sense that it's Dickie's story, and I have no problem with that, which is why Chris opens and closes the film, and it makes sense. I just think that they wanted it to be like 4 different movies at once. They wanted it to be about Dickie, which is fine. They wanted it to be about Tony growing up, which is fine. They wanted it to be about Harold, which again, that's fine. But I don't think that it's necessarily a good idea to put everything, because as soon as you got invested in one side of the story, it went to another. And then, from that, it went to another, and then it jumped, and then all of a sudden it just ended. And I knew it. I called it. I told one of my friends the day I was going to go see it, last Friday, I said, I'm willing to bet they're going to leave it on some sort of cliffhanger, or something's going to be resolved, because that's just how they do things. The Sopranos writers and David Chase is the creator. So I knew something was going to happen. Like the fact that we didn't figure out who Dickie's killer is, that makes sense, because that's just classic Sopranos, and I get it. But that's literally the definition of bad storytelling. See, people love the ending of The Sopranos because they think, and I don't have a problem with it necessarily, but I'm somebody that does like completion. I do like having answers, at least an answer that makes sense. I think at this point, anybody that thinks that Tony is still alive, like that fade to black or that blackout, whatever you want to call it, I think he did get shot, and I think Tony is dead in the current timeline as of right now, because of what they did to Phil in the whole war thing. I think New Jersey lost the war. So it just doesn't make any sense, especially now, because I heard somewhere along the lines, or I heard something along the lines that they wanted to do a movie with, about Tony Soprano and what happens after, or it was like one of the characters or something. And then James Gandolfini ended up dying from a heart attack, so that never happened. And so I think now that kind of solidifies that, because why would they bring somebody else in to play Tony Soprano after that? Like, it makes sense to bring his son in because this is before. But that blackout, I know they wanted to trick the audience and stuff, and it's cool. I mean, somebody in the YouTube comments section of that, because I often go back and watch that clip just to analyze it. They say this is the best, this one person said, this is the best ending to a TV series ever, and the reason is because we're still talking about it to this day because nobody knows. And I think that's a great way to put it. That's actually true. I mean, there are very few Breaking Bads and there are very few Sopranos and Game of Thrones and classic TV shows like that, because you always hear, I don't know if this is necessarily the top three for most people, even for me, because like I said, I haven't seen Game of Thrones. But the three that I do hear talked about the most, and as you could tell by the name of the podcast, I'm a big fan of Breaking Bad, but it's The Sopranos, Game of Thrones, Breaking Bad, and then, you hear The Wire and Billions tossed in there. It's, Breaking Bad and The Sopranos are two shows that are classics, and they pave the way for shows today, and it only makes sense that they take inspiration from one another, because Breaking Bad came afterwards, and then, the shows that came after Breaking Bad, so it was kind of like a domino effect. I just think they wanted to do too much. Like, and some people are saying this is setting up, a mini series, maybe not a movie or two movies. It's just going to be like another show, like 5-6 episodes. I don't know about that. I mean, maybe with, the world we live in now and the pandemic and the HBO Max is a thing, it's possible. But you got to remember, they have to put funding into that. They have to do a bunch of things that allow that to happen. And I don't know if they want to do that. I don't know if David Chase wants to go into something again with The Sopranos. Just I'm not saying that he's only doing it for money, but I think that there's a big part of it that he's left it alone for so long. When did the show end? It was like 2007, 2008, right? It was right around Breaking Bad, I'm pretty sure. I wish they had another about just Dickie's story. And whether or not we find out about the cop, because if you've seen the show The Sopranos, Tony, some people think it's misdirect. Some people think that he's telling the truth, or he just needed, the cop dead, because he sends Chris to kill this one retired cop on his retirement day, the day that he gets off the force. And we don't know. It's left ambiguous for a reason, so I get it. But at the same time, it's like the whole point of the movie was, in a way, to show you Dickie's story and how he died, and, more or less who killed him. We didn't get any of that. We got some of his story. We got the fact that, he was shot in the head, but we don't know who did it. And I guess technically we have no reason not to believe the writing, because we see the guy come up behind him, he shoots him, he dies. And then later in The Sopranos, we call back to that moment. I think it's season 4, episode 1, where Tony goes to Chris and he's like, yeah, that's the guy that killed your father. If you want to kill him, go ahead. So I don't know. I think there's no reason not to believe, but at the same time, it's like, well, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So it's obviously meant to screw with your head one way or another. And like I said, that's the definition of bad storytelling, technically, leaving things unresolved like that. For me personally, I would have loved more closure, but I knew we weren't going to get that. And I think anybody going into this who has seen The Sopranos and they know how the show works and they know the style, especially with the same people being involved, because I guarantee you, if there was another writer, or if David Chase sold the rights to the show, or something happened where he wasn't involved, he wouldn't, I don't think the story would have ended up the same. I think we would have gotten more answers. And that's neither good or bad. It depends on what kind of fan you are. For me, it's fine, but I would have loved just a little bit more. So hopefully there is something else that comes afterwards. Then, of course, there, the side characters and stuff, like they had younger Paulie, they had younger Silvio, they had a lot of these people that we've come to know and love from the show. And everybody says Silvio acts like a parody of himself, which I get. He acted like a cartoon character, and whether that was intentional or not, obviously it was left in, so that they liked it enough. And it works, I guess, but it's not something that, he's not like a huge character, which makes sense because of his position at that time. He doesn't really do anything too memorable. Some people say it screws with the timeline, but if you look back, it's Tony and Silvio, I think, if I remember correctly, I've only seen The Sopranos once, but Silvio looks to be about, maybe a year or two older than Tony, so I don't think it's too bad. Tony's supposed to be almost 18. I think it was 17 by the time the show ends. Or, I'm sorry, by the time the movie ends, and I think Silvio may have been in his early 20s. So it's not that far. And it doesn't really bother me because I don't think they even mention it, so I'd have to watch the movie again to be sure. But even in this show, I don't think they say how old the characters are, especially Silvio. They might say Tony's age once or twice, but I never caught on to it, so obviously it's not that important. I would say it's overall it's a good movie. It's not something that I would necessarily think is. I wouldn't put it in my top 10. I don't think it's that good. It's a good movie. If you want a decent mob movie, that's the thing. Like, it's The Sopranos. The Sopranos is anything but generic. Usually, I mean, that's what most people think. And that's what I think. The Sopranos is unique, and I don't think they captured that uniqueness. Like I said, it felt like a shell of what it was, like of what the show was. And they tried to recreate certain things, and they tried to, have callbacks for fan service, which is nice, but it's not that it doesn't make any sense. It's just like there's no reason for it other than fan service. So that's why it just took me off guard. You're like Holston's Diner, like there's no reason to. The movie practically, I mean, not really, but practically it ends there as one of the last shots, and it kind of just fades away. See, and that's the thing. I think anybody who doesn't think Tony died in the end, it's very significant. In that diner, Meadow walks in, he looks up, the guy comes out of the guy in the members only jacket comes out of the bathroom, shoots Tony and kills him, and then that's it. I mean, I don't see another reason. Why would the movie end with young Tony looking out through Holston's in almost the same way, except, in the show he's sitting, and then in the movie he's standing at the door. There's no reason, in my opinion, for that to happen. That's very significant, and that's not an accident. That's just. I think Tony is dead, and I think especially now that the actor is dead, James Gandolfini has passed. I think it makes a ton of sense in order to have him killed off, and that's really. I mean, what was he going to do anyways? Because if he didn't die, he was going to jail. So, prison really, and it just doesn't. It doesn't make any sense to me. So I'd love to know what you guys think, if anybody has any different thoughts or anything, because for the most part on social media and on websites, it seems like everybody's in the same headspace with this, which I'm included. I think there's enough to go off of to be satisfied for now, but it's like having a crumb. Like, it's like almost being promised a full meal and then you get, a side dish or something. It didn't feel important. It didn't, like, if we didn't have this, I don't think it would change anything necessarily, because with things like this, like with El Camino for Breaking Bad, that actually gave something to the show. And I know that's an opinion, but in my opinion, it adds something without ruining anything, and that's a very fine line to walk. Not a lot of people can pull that off, especially with shows like this. You want to be careful, because when you end on such a high note like Breaking Bad did, it's strange to see something happen where they don't screw it up, and it's actually a good thing. See, because the many Saints of Newark jump back and forth, between timelines to present day to the past, and then they go, even in the past, they go on for a few years to tell, 3 different stories. And all of that is great, but it's not cohesive, if that makes any sense. It doesn't flow in the best way, which is why it should have been its own thing. Like, there should have been 3 movies, one about Dickie, Harold, and then there should have been Tony's story. And Tony's story might be next, and, who knows, it could tie it all together if he kills Harold or something like that, which I guess that would tie it in, and then that would cut that loose end off, because, like I said, again, in the show, he's not there, so who knows? But I did like it. I think I'd rate it around a 6.57 out of 10. 1 being the worst, 10 being the best. I think that's fair because I liked it more. If 10 is the best and 5 is right in the middle, I don't think it merits a 5. I think it's better than a 5. How much? I don't know. I think 6.5 is fair. I'd have to rewatch it because the funny thing is, the more I think about it, the more I actually like it. So I'd have to see it again, and I have HBO Max. I'll rewatch it sooner or later before it's up on or before it's gone. But I'm interested to know what other people think. Like I said, if there's any different opinions, leave them down below. I'd love to go back and forth. I'll respond and we could have a conversation about this. That's pretty much it. I don't know how long this podcast is going to go on, what's going to change, what's not going to change. Hopefully it works and hopefully I like it. I'm hoping it's going to be somewhat therapeutic. So I guess we'll find out. Next movie I'll be talking about, I'm not too sure. Maybe Halloween Kills, probably. Since that's the next one that's coming out that's new that I'm interested in. But we're not going to have any structure to this. This is just, for me, just personally what I want to do. And I'd love to know what you guys think.